Welcome to a Philosophusters production. Anybody can be a philosopher.
Virtual reality, an introduction for the philosophically minded. As technology continues to boom in the 21st century, you've probably started to hear more and more people toss around the words virtual reality. Your gamer friends mentioned it years ago, and you were skeptical then, but now it's really starting to inch its way into daily conversation. To keep you up to speed, we're going to learn a little bit more about what virtual reality means and why you should be aware of it as you navigate our technologically driven world. Okay, so what is virtual reality? Virtual reality is an interactive and immersive experience in a simulated world. In other words, it's that place your nephew goes when he puts on that clunky-looking headset and stumbles into walls around the living room. To give you a better example, imagine you're playing a video game. You're sitting in front of a screen moving a character with a remote. Now imagine the screen is all around you, and you are the character in the game. Got it? Good. That is what it's like to be in virtual reality. But there are also different types of virtual reality that vary in interactability. There's passive VR, where you're in a virtual environment but lack control. You're more of a spectator. Semi-passive VR, where you're in a virtual environment and can make decisions but aren't physically active, like a choose-your-own-adventure type movie. And active VR, where you're in a virtual environment, can make decisions, and are physically active while doing so. This is the type of VR your nephew is participating in. Speaking of your nephew, let's take a closer look at that clunky-looking headset he's wearing. In order to participate in virtual reality, you need a vehicle, a deliverer of a representation, if you will, to bring you into this simulated world. In the case of your nephew, that vehicle happens to be a VR headset that looks a little something like this. Handheld controllers, one for each hand, are also used with VR headsets. These tools allow you to interact within the virtual world. While there are many potential vehicles for virtual reality, the most common is probably something you have in your back pocket right now, a smartphone. Every time you pull up a filter on Snapchat or catch a creature in Pokemon Go, you're interacting with virtual reality. However, this form is less immersive than the VR headset because you're still very aware of your presence or sense of actually being in the real world. When this happens, it's called augmented reality. It's not quite virtual reality because it's simply your world that's been augmented with virtual features. Though it is possible to stimulate the effects of a VR headset with a smartphone and thus enter into virtual reality. So, how do you reduce your awareness of presence in the real world and increase your presence within VR? According to experiments performed by philosophers like Mel Slater, the best way is to emulate your real-world experience as much as possible. In reality, we use our senses to smell, touch, see, taste, and hear the world around us. So, to replicate touching or feeling within virtual reality, VR developers try to incorporate haptics. Haptics, or technology that simulates tactile sensation, can range anywhere from feeling the wind from a fan or walking on a raised plank. In this example, a woman is walking on a raised plank not very far from the ground, while in virtual reality, she's walking about 100 feet up. Say you're driving in a convertible in VR and feel the wind from the fan of your living room. You might feel more present in the VR convertible because the sensation of the wind whipping by when you drive at high speeds is mimicked by your fan. For this reason, some philosophers like John Cogburn and Mark Silcox believe that action is what makes users truly feel present in VR, or feel like they're really residing within the virtual world. Thus, they believe that fully active VR is not truly possible without some sort of full-body suit that mimics human sensations with high accuracy. The way we see the world is another important factor for presence in VR. If you think about it, sight is the most targeted sense in VR. Especially in its early stages, VR relied, and still relies, heavily on visual aids to make its users feel present within the virtual space. That said, wouldn't the best way to mimic our real-world sensation for sight be to mimic the way we see the world as humans? Eric Ramirez, a modern-day philosopher, thought so. He and Scott LaBarge coined the term perspectival fidelity to describe the degree to which perspective is faithful to actual human experience. Perspectival fidelity includes elements pertaining to the relative height of the virtual subject, the depth of field visible in the virtual landscape, representations of neurotypical color vision and audition, the absence of non-diegetic sound in the virtual environment, and so on. For this reason, first-person perspective experiences should yield the most perspectival fidelity, at least more so than second or third person. Hardware elements like the frame and refresh rates of a display and the weight of a head-mounted display can also enhance or detract from the perspectival fidelity of an experience, depending on whether they impact a subject's point of view. A final important factor to consider when trying to increase presence in VR is context realism, another term from Ramirez and LaBarge. Like perspectival fidelity, context realism is a matter of degree. Some experiences can be more context real, and some can be less. Where perspectival fidelity refers to features relevant to the structure of experience, context realism refers to features relevant to the content of an experience. Such features may include aspects relating to the plausibility from a subject's point of view of a virtual world's environment. For example, committing a crime and then getting arrested in VR is more context real than simply beginning your VR experience in jail. Adding context to your situation makes it more realistic to human life because it gives you a reason for why you were there in the first place. So, what do haptic-filled, perspectively faithful, context-real VR experiences mean for our society? Well, they can mean many things, but today we'll just introduce the concept of VR as a method of study by using a famous ethical dilemma as an example. As VR becomes more faithful to real-life human experiences, scientists and philosophers alike wonder about the potential for such technology, especially in terms of experiments that are less ethical to conduct in real life. Let's look at the trolley problem. You're in a control booth and there's a trolley plummeting down the tracks. On one side of the track, there's a single worker stuck on the tracks, and on the other side, there are 5 workers stuck on the tracks. As it stands, the trolley is headed for the 5 workers, so you'd have to pull the switch to make it head for the single worker. What do you do? Is there an ethically correct choice? Well, philosophers don't really know, and obviously we can't conduct this experiment in real life to make an educated prediction. The ethical implications would be too high because one or more people would have to die, or somebody would have to think they're in charge of the lives of one or more people through this decision. But with VR technology, if high in perspectival fidelity, context realism, and haptics, we might be able to see how somebody would react without sparing mental or physical fragility. Though, there are reasons to believe that even this type of experiment edges on unethical. But more on that next time. Thank you for tuning in. This has been
a Velocibusters production, brought to you by Zoe Baumbach.